I prefer to preach from here simply because the message that I have is so simple that if you throw something at me, I can duck behind this and save my own life. But the theme of St. Louise de Marillac, St. Catherine Labouré, Vincentian saints, is a rather simple theme. And yet it's very difficult for me to get it around my own mind. I'm troubled because of its simplicity. I'm troubled because it is so simple that you are living it right now and don't know it, I don't think. It's impossible to think of St. Louise and St. Catherine without thinking of St. Vincent, because their spirituality, their Christian lives, was so heavily influenced by Vincent de Paul. Louise de Marillac, a widow with a son, and I'm sure the sisters could talk much more eloquently than I. A very scrupulous woman, wouldn't you say that? Very scrupulous. All the details of life and all, she get worried over this, worried over that. And I'm sure there were people who say, oh boy, I don't want to be near that woman. She drives me nuts. And yet, through the influence of Vincent de Paul and his own spirituality, as Louise began to grow in that spirituality, she encountered God in a way that she never had before. I'll get back to that. St. Catherine Labouré, a daughter of charity. And she was in the process of learning about St. Vincent. At the moment, she didn't even have vows yet when she received the visions, the apparitions of what we call the miraculous medal, Our Lady of the Miraculous Medal. And in her own simplicity, she just shared with others what was happening. And so as we look at these two women and look at how they were, one already a widow, the other a young woman, and their influence with Vincent de Paul in the case of Louise de Marillac, and Vincentian spirituality in the case of Catherine Labouré. What binds them together and binds all Vincentians is the deep understanding that Vincent had that our lives are a prayer. That if we are to pray and be people of prayer, it necessarily includes service to others. No matter how grand, no matter how small. Louise, influenced by Vincent, went to serve the sick poor. Children who were cast out of society, you might say. Nobody taking care of them. Their families couldn't. Catherine Labouré, her holiness was not in the apparitions. Her holiness was spending her life in an old folks' home, taking care of people who were up in years, had health problems, and were dependent on others. The only photograph that we have of Catherine Labouré is Catherine talking to a man in a wheelchair. It's the only picture we have of her. It's the only picture we need. And so as we think of them as Vincentian saints, let's not think of people who spend 3 hours a day on their knees in a chapel somewhere, who are kneeling there with a halo around their heads. Thomas Merton, talking about prayers and prayer, said that the prayers that we say, the Our Father, the Hail Mary, the Miraculous Medal Novena, the Stations of the Cross, these prayers lead us to prayer. These prayers, plural, are the road to prayer, to an intimate union with God that exists from our hearts to his heart. It is not in reading all those words in a book, as good as that is, but we have to allow those words, those prayers, those novenas to lead us quietly to something much more deep. And that is where Louise and Catherine went. And it was from there that their whole lives became prayer as they went out to serve the sick poor, to serve those old gentlemen. And what does that mean for us today? That means as we come here and recite the prayers of the novena, we might recite a rosary, whatever other prayer book we might have, that has to lead us to union with Jesus. Otherwise, it's not working. It is that union with Jesus that makes us return home. And when we see the neighbor who's under the weather, has got kids, make some chicken soup and bring it over to the house. Throw in some noodles, because all kids love noodles. Somebody who needs a ride to the doctor. Hey, I can do that tomorrow. Maybe there's somebody in our family that I'm not talking to. And the family's very conscious of that, so when there's a family gathering, they don't know where to put them. I remember when my father died, my grandfather. I was in third grade, fourth grade. And I remember hearing my family talk about who's going to sit next to Aunt Anna. And I didn't know why, and I never found out. So when we got to church, I left Mom and Dad, my sisters, and I sat next to Aunt Anna. I was just afraid that nobody would sit next to her. And so there are simple things that we can do to show the love of God, whether you're a third, fourth grader, or you're the grandparents of third, fourth graders, or great-grandparents of third, fourth graders. Then our prayers become a prayer. We live the love of Christ humbly, without headlines, just as Louise did, just as Catherine did. And that kind of prayer, think about it, can change the face of the earth.